We are podcasting now. Welcome to Adjunct of Computing. This is for episode 183 of Advent of Computing, a digital gap, an episode which I was introduced to by Sean, by him just sending me a screenshot of a graph.
Well, you got to look at the
saying
graph,
that
Joe.
Things were going down.
Look, Joe, if you look very closely at a spreadsheet, I believe you can answer any question in the world. That's not accurate, but maybe you could try.
That's some real engineering thought.
Oh my God. I guess I could open this with how I introduced you to the idea of the topic, right?
Go for it.
So I've been reading that Office of Naval Research report, which has brain poisoned me, apparently. And I thought, wow, geez, I wish I could do data reduction on the factoids in this report. So I sat down and I put it in a spreadsheet and I graphed computers versus year, and there's just a weird flat point between 1945 and 1949. A possible gap. Why is it there?
We love information gaps here. I think that's the first thing that gets me is, I'll let you go on with your description, but boy, does that feel, again, in our wheelhouse, you know? Like when we were talking about the throwing out nines, the casting out nines thing, and we got deep into that. That's exactly that kind of thing.
Emails about that.
There's a gap here, and yeah.
Yeah, if you tell me something is unknown or, oh, there's some missing information, of course I'm going to be interested. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here as well. We're here for mutual support. So yeah, tell me about this flat line.
Oh, there's only 10 computers that are created in that period, right? In that 5-year gap. Right after that, 1952, there are 40 computers in the world. 1953, there are 85.
Yeah, and even I didn't realize, because I can't remember if you actually go into that number in the episode, but that jump from
it's
huge.
Like
5 to 40 is actually a lot more significant than I thought.
Now, it's wild because the graph does blip up, goes flat for 5 years, and then goes almost straight up. That's why as soon as I saw it, because when I was reading the reports, I'm like, oh, just trying to keep track of the numbers in my head, this seems kind of weird. This doesn't line up how I think it would. And then when you graph it, it's really clear that it doesn't line up how I assume. Because in my head, I had the faulty assumption that, computers show up in 1945, and then it's exponential growth from there, right? We go from 2 to 4 to whatever happens next. But, you assume the red line goes up, but it doesn't initially go up. It flattens out and then goes up.
Well, I think that's even the weirder thing, is to say that it goes up, then stops, then goes up.
Yes.
Because if it was just like there wasn't much and then it takes off, then that can kind of make sense. You get a little hockey stick. That is totally reasonable. But
and that totally caught my interest because of, I know I've been mentioning that I want to do an episode on arguments against computing. And this was kind of part of that.
Oh, was it really?
A little bit.
I think this is, you've brought up the we shouldn't program computers arguments a couple times, and you're the only person I've ever heard. I know you're not making the argument, but just to even bring it up. So, we're going to get into that.
Brain poison, right? I'll read some papers and think about them for like 5 years.
You nerd snipe yourself.
I do.
Really what it is.
I do, where people send me a PDF and I'll be lying awake in bed 3 years later being, man, that made some good points. I can't believe they said that in an article in ACM. Wild.
They say some good stuff.
They say some spicy things in, proceedings of ACM papers. But it's just interesting to me because it made me think about how a lot of early computer papers and early books will justify their existence and be like, it's actually very important that we're talking about electronic digital computers that are programmable. And it's like, why are they doing that? Well, because there were arguments that it wasn't very important to talk about electronic digital computers. But those aren't as well preserved. Those are harder to find, which makes them more interesting to me.
And that's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for.
I will say, playing right off of that, again, before we went to tape here, I was already saying I don't have a lot of, I don't have proper sections this time, but I do have some major bullet pointed thoughts. So this dovetails in perfectly with one of my first thoughts, which is just saying, I appreciate you finally voicing your concern about digital computers perceived bursting onto the scene.
Yeah.
When they did not, in fact, burst onto the scene.
They did not burst onto the scene at all. Kind of. Yes and no.
Yes and no. But that, I think that we'd both agree there's this kind of preconceived perception that, computers appear and then everybody is like, wow, well, that's like amazing. Let's all do that.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a bias towards what won. And the fact is there were 5 years where it was in really hot contention whether or not computers like we have now would win. And I think like even through the 50s, that argument's still happening. Just it's become more clear that digital computers are probably the way to go.
Yeah.
But
or at least they're showing their usefulness, maybe.
Yes, they're showing their value.
Because I almost think that ties into, hell, I'm just going to go into it so I'm not tangenting all over the place. I have another big view of computers are historically not what we perceive them to be now. So let me walk you through this. I think you understand a lot of what I'm...
Next point, Joe.
But this goes with a lot of the, just the working with history and the fact that we can only look at history with the lenses we have now.
Yes.
And the lens we have now is not, you have to put on like your anti-lensing lens to lens out the present to understand what they were seeing in the past. Because their context is totally different. Even if you think for any bit of history. But one thing that occurs to me that I just think is interesting to think about is we think of computers now, you just look at your computer that's in front of you and it's this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And yet this is pretty implicit, but I think it's one of those things that's so implicit that you don't think about it because it seems silly to think about. And that's not what the perception of a computer is in the late 40s, early 50s, which obviously that part is super obvious. But even more in that there is no conception of computers being the kinds of things that we use them for today remotely, because we don't use computers for crunching numbers. That is what they're doing.
But that's not the application.
That's not what a computer is. You set anybody down with a computer, that's not what it is. And yet, I think that's the big relevancy here is that's a big lane that you're going down in this episode that I thought was super cool to investigate on, which is the idea of sequenced calculators, right?
Yes.
Because that is a super cool thing. We don't even have to go down this route, but just talking about the IBM stored sequence electronic, the SSEC, I think, stored sequence electronic.
Do you mean the Harvard Mark I? Oh, wait, no, that's the ASCC.
And I always get, it's the one. So there's a whole thing because Watson Sr. thought that Mark I was dumb, but then they decided to make their own thing. Like that's a whole thing. But that one's interesting because it literally is a calculator. I don't know how much you know about SSEC.
I don't know enough.
But it reminded me a lot about the one that you were talking about because SSEC is kind of like the first proper computer IBM ever did, besides the Harvard Mark I. And it's built out of calculator parts. And it's very similar in that it's doing, it's being thought of more in terms of a calculator that is doing a sequence of instructions or a series of calculation steps rather than some kind of general purpose computer, right? And that's where computers come from. The read I get, and I'll give this back to you because I've been going on this a while, I just think this is a really rich vein to plumb, is that when computers start, that's what the idea is, right? To have a calculator that you can automate, And then all of a sudden, it's almost like as they work on that idea, they realize it's something bigger than that,
Well, I think it's a mix. The vein that you're talking about is very, very clear because so going to the 40s, the context is if you grab a professor in 1940 and we're like, what's a computer? They'd say, well, a computer is a clerical worker, predominantly a woman, that sits down with a desktop calculator and a sheet of paper and carries out a sequence of instructions. They probably wouldn't say instructions, but carries out a sequence of calculations. They compute numbers. They are an entity that computes, a computer, or an analog computer, which that doesn't carry out a sequence of steps, but it carries out like an analogy of an equation.
Right. It carries out a continuous modeling of the of the situation.
I don't know. I haven't read enough analog stuff recently to tell you how, like, what terms people were using in the period to talk about analog computation. But at least in my digital pilled brain, it makes sense to think about analog computation as kind of a series of steps, because you still have like this integrator is plugged into this adder, which is plugged into these multipliers.
My broken brain definitely sees it as computers are more time domain or digital computers are more time domain and analog computers are more frequency domain, if that makes any sense. It's not really, that's not like an actual description of them, but it's like as a metaphor or an analogy. That's kind of.
But so if that's your context, right, that you have these non-automated systems, right? Because a cleric with a desktop calculator is still a system, right? It's just a very human system that needs a lunch break.
A cleric with a desktop calculator is a really badass D&D character that I'll have to run sometime.
What kind of cleric are you? I'm a clerical worker. Oh, can you still heal me? No.
So sorry.
No, that's a correct interpretation of history. But if that's your context, if you're looking to replace those, you're not going to be, it'll be such a leap of logic to just think, well, if I make a general purpose machine that can operate a series of instructions that's Turing complete, that would equally well replace an analog computer or a human computer. You're not going to think that. You're going to think, well, I'd love a calculator that I could give a list of commands to.
Right. Like that's, again, where you started off with. That's all the Bell Model 1 is about.
Yeah. And it took, so the other vein is people
things to do on a strip of paper and run through them.
Yeah. But the other side of the coin is people that did take that leap of logic, like Alan Turing, who knew, well, you can make a more sophisticated machine.
Yeah. Which leads off on, that takes us really perfectly to another spot, which is
the value of Turing completeness over time. I'll make another graph. I'll do it.
Okay, you do that. But what I was going to get at, I think these are both valuable, but I'm going to plumb some different depths.
All right.
Is the simultaneity of things happening in history, which we've talked about in terms of computers before. But I think that there is certainly a relevance we could talk to about this graph or, the way this timeline works out, because I think that's kind of my read on it. Not necessarily that I'm making that my argument, but I think that's something that could be brought up is that it feels to me like potentially that initial ramp, right, is people independently having the means to solve the same problem that they all have at the same time. And then there's this gap where they all did it, and then everybody finds out about it, or those people are like coming up with their next idea of what to do now that they've done that. And then that idea spreads, and then people start doing it, and then finally the computers exist,
It's like sophomore syndrome or something.
Yeah. There's a good one too, is maybe it takes one. I mean, that's actually really not a bad read either, in that for the people who already made stuff, looking at Eckert Mauchly, you've got some real serious sophomore syndrome there, in that they make ENIAC, and then the whole time they're doing ENIAC, they're like, this sucks.
We're going to do EDVAC. EDVAC's going to be the future. Better.
And then EDVAC takes forever, and then Eckert and Mauchly break off, and they're like, no, we're going to do it. We'll do an even better thing. And then they come up with UNIVAC, and UNIVAC takes forever.
Yep.
So I can't compare that to anything else, but
BINAC's perfect.
BINAC. Because how could I forget BINAC?
It's two of them. It's two computers, Joe.
You know what? I keep again, I'm still reading that engineering report that I was talking about last episode on EDVAC. Just going through it very slowly, just picking it up every now and then and reading a couple pages. So it's taken me a long time. But I didn't realize in that one either, as an aside, that EDVAC is also two computers.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
They can't keep doing it.
You know what's sweet? And these are the kinds of beautiful things you only find from reading papers that it's not in any articles or anything. It's two CPUs.
Okay.
And they have two separate memory banks. There's a K of memory, and they're each in their own ovens. and they have a setting in the instructions so that if one of the ovens goes down, it will ignore the top bit in the address so that you can just use one of the banks of the memory without having any problems.
Oh my God.
While they're working on the other one.
That's
so
really
I just
funny.
keep thinking of you and Binac when I see that, because that came out of nowhere.
I gotta read that EDVAC report now.
You should. I don't
really,
know
really
if I sent
funny.
you a link, but that's a fun one.
Send me a link. I haven't done an EDVAC the machine episode. I should though, because if it's two
that's kinda
machines
surprising,
with two
honestly.
autoclaves, hell yes.
Yes,
That
it is. On the left and right.
oh my God, you have
It
to love
specifies.
the engineering back in that period. Just like,
great.
oh, vacuum tubes don't work very well, but if we double the number of them by virialization theorem, it'll work a little better.
I mean, they're not wrong.
No, they're not. Mathematically, they're not wrong. It's just silly.
I feel like EMCC, we'll get back on topic at some point here, but EMCC is the peak of like get it done engineering. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
Which I very much appreciate. I'm not.
And-
I'm not a huge proponent of any particular school of engineering, but I can appreciate that they stick to their weird guns
and somehow
they make it work.
Somehow that school of engineering is where compilers come from. Anyway, moving on. What's the next topic?
Well, I don't have topics. Let's see. I have my next bullet point, which we've already. A lot of these tend to overlap. I've got calculators strapped together.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That's so weird that it's shown up twice now. That's so strange.
And I swear I've heard, I mean, it's just, people describing things, and you can kind of describe a lot of things however you want, but even that Harvard Mark I to a certain extent is a bunch of calculators strapped together by a central drive shaft and clutch mechanisms,
If they're actually the ones that were crazy enough to make the calculator clutch, man, I need to go read that paper now.
Again,
'Cause I don't know enough about
I'm
the
sure
Harvard
I
Mark
make
I.
shit up. And I haven't read much. I haven't read papers or anything on Harvard Mark I. It's just I feel like I've heard it described somewhere
I
in
have
that way.
early IBM computers somewhere on here that I know has. It's on there. There's the IBM shelf. That has, I'm pretty sure, information about the Mark I in it. I should just sit down.
I would
with that
love
tonight.
to read about that. Ooh,
Yes.
you are doing such a great job of just leading me to my own thoughts.
What can
this
I say?
episode.
I'm an expert shepherd.
So here we are. And I think all of these topics, like, we got to come back around to every single one of them, because I have more to say about all of them. But I also just
That's why
want to
you're
hit
here,
every
Joe.
single one of them. Going kind of back to that, like, what is the perception of a computer at the time that they're coming up with computers as a thing that doesn't exist yet and isn't really a thing that, again, people aren't like, let's make a computer. We need computers because that's a thing that will be popular in the future and very useful.
We'll be able to make
gotta
a lot of money
making
off computers in the 1990s. So we should start now.
Yes. Yes. Which, I mean, we're joking, but I feel like that really is a lot of the vibe of history sometimes, of just like backseat history.
I mean, if you're trying to write history and you start from the standpoint of where history ends up, yes, that is going to be how
Well, you
end
can't
up
not,
describing it.
because we're in the present. So, of course,
Yeah,
that's
it's
gonna be
really
your default
difficult.
mindset.
That's why I've been kind of joking that I've been in a 1940s rut, but like it takes a long time and a lot of reading to like get in to wrap your head around a specific context, like computing in the late 40s, which I'm
Well, and also, I'll also slip this in as an aside, because it's a note I have that's not super deep, but I do really want to go over it again, just for general talking about history purposes, is a thing even I forget about all the time, and it's super relevant to those first couple of years here, is a year is really short in looking back at history and really long when you are going through that year.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
when you think about working at a company and how often it takes you to like bust out a major feature, or I used to work in automotive, so it's like
Joe,
a yearly
please-
cycle. You do a
please
whole
don't
vehicle.
speak to me about that.
I'm sorry, that's not a world that exists.
It's a nice
gonna be
Friday.
okay.
I'm having a beer with my buddy. I don't want to
You're
think
right.
about the release cycle and software development life cycle right now.
That was a mistake. Okay, so we'll talk about. I'll put it in terms of cars, so that you don't have to think about year job. Is that we do a new car, every year. It's the cycle, and that is a long time. I mean,
Yes.
it's a pretty impressively short time to bust out a new car design or whatever. But like those kind of cycles are, it's a whole year of working. And when you're doing it, it's a long time and new things are happening the whole time. But then all of a sudden, when you look back on it in history, it's just, here's this decade, and like things happen in that decade. But a decade takes a freaking ton of time when you're in the decade.
I think it's a kind of compressive
And there's
effect.
lots of things happening. Lots of little things happening every day.
So if you think about like the difference between 2019 and 2020, that to you is going to seem like, oh yeah, you could point out like probably a couple months in there where different things occurred. I should have picked better years, shouldn't I? But if you
I
try to
pick
think,
out a couple,
okay, one or two. But if you try to think about like 1945 and 1946, you're not going to be able to say, oh, in June that happened because it was so long ago. You don't have the firsthand like experience with it. But we were alive in 2019. We remember how long it was. But yeah, I'm just agreeing with you. You're absolutely correct.
And that's why I say I don't have much more, but it's worth always keeping that in mind when you're trying to look at things in historical perspective. That you really don't is, man, those years that they're working on those machines is a lot of things are happening, and there's a kind of a long time for it to happen. And in the big scheme of like historical things unfolding, a few years isn't a long time, but that's the thing that makes those things unfold is all the little things.
And it
happening
represents
over the course
such a huge investment, such a huge personal investment, right?
Yep.
Because like the Imperial College computer, the first guy that worked on the ALU put in like 2 or 3 years,
right?
Just making
that's massive.
One
Whenever you
component.
think of, I feel like that kind of timeline specifically. Like I think about someone working on something for 2 years, and somehow when you hear about it, you're like, oh yeah, that's
2 years.
That's a big project. But when you're the one, like, can you? I mean, we do, but like working on a personal project and keeping on it for 2 years and managing to come out on the other side of it, like for a lot of commercial projects, you don't come out on the other side of that thing the way that you wanted to,
Yeah,
that's
it's impressive.
a long time. But when you're the other, even not in the future, just when you're the other person, you're like, oh, cool thing you made. That took you 2 years? Wow, nice job.
Yep. That's a commitment.
Oh man. But so I skipped right over the place that I was gonna go to, which was we were talking about Harvard Mark I, and the Bell Model 1 was slipping in there. And another thing to mention is, I guess the ENIAC's the place to take it off, and especially because you mention it here and there. That the thing about the ENIAC, trying to be straightforward, and then I'll come back to it because this is what I do. That the ENIAC is, it's not that it's the first computer. It's that really, especially at the time, it is, the big claim to fame is that it's an electronic computer, right? And I mean,
electronic digital. It is digital.
Not that binary. Is also true.
It's not binary, but it's digital.
With the assumption that we're talking about the world of digital, which we do deserve to talk more about.
I can put a motor on an analog computer and make it an electronic computer.
But that's like, it was the last episode or the episode before that you, no, it's when we were talking about magnetic memories and also talking about mercury delay lines and whatnot. And when you were just as an aside mentioning, well, it doesn't matter like what your instruction timing is versus the cycle of your memory, because unlike a drum, it's fast. And that is a thing that's actually crazy. I feel like you mentioned this at some point in episodes long ago. Is like people kind of like didn't know what to do with this speed at the time, because you went from like clunk, 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 clunk computing as the most impressive fast thing to literal microseconds.
Well, now you have to
of operation times.
Well, speaking of systems that involve humans in the loop, you have to develop a whole way of managing that kind of resource that you wouldn't have had to do before.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that also becomes just like such a, it suddenly becomes ineffable to me. I don't know how much they were thinking about that at the time, but in that, like, you're just dealing all of a sudden with these time scales that are impossible, Well, like that are just so not on the human time level. Whereas like if you're working with relay systems or something, you can grok it, but then when you get into those electronic speeds, it's like magic world.
With everything that has to be built up around for management, that's straight up inventing new kinds of jobs, like new whole descriptions of jobs and careers that never existed before.
Oh, and that, yes, because you have talked about this before. This is all coming back, and I think we're feeding each other's brains on whatever it was that I'm thinking of, because I think that you've talked before about keeping the beast fed, right?
Yeah.
Is that now all of a sudden it's fast, so all of a sudden you've got this kind of IO problem.
Well, it's the whole, I forget who said it first, but people talk about like the digital priesthood, where you have to have clerical workers that protect the computer, the precious, fast resource, from the Luddites that want to use it. And that's a whole class that didn't exist before. Right? And so it's a whole... I mean, if you want to talk about computers bending human brains into weird shapes, like, that's one of the early expressions, right? Is suddenly you have people that are feeding the beast. You have people that are protecting, managing, and maintaining this really arcane device when you get down to it.
For sure. But yeah, I don't, the deeper thing there that just gets me is that a lot of this context of there are semi-automated calculation things like before this.
Yes.
And it's not that like computers pop out of nowhere. I think that's part of it is, I think, more people who are into this kind of stuff than not maybe have some kind of inkling of that.
Yeah, there's,
and like, especially if you
before.
go to like CHM or something, or like a good computer exhibit, they'll tend to lead with those kind of things. But I think it's just not intuitive, or I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that I feel like there is this, boop, computers just pop into existence feeling, and maybe
that's
it's because of just the magical feeling of computers, they feel like just this
So I have
magic,
opinions.
Ungrokkable thing.
I have opinions on why people like you, Joe, have been tricked into feeling that way.
I thought you might, so lay it on me.
Part of it, I think, is how computer history is discussed. So let me lay out the problem for you. You're writing a book on computer history. Where do you start?
I mean,
right?
I'm gonna. If it's a tough question, that's one angle where I can go, that's a tough question, Sean.
Yeah.
Or as someone who is just fed, or just understands the rough outlines of this kind of history. Well, I don't know, maybe ENIAC,
Right. It's a really tough question. And that's why one of the things I'll say constantly is, what's the point where a really sophisticated circuit becomes a really simple computer? That's a really, really blurry line.
Yep, we fell right into that one.
Yeah. So a lot of histories start with either the very beginning of time, like CHM, if you go to their exhibit, their curation starts with the abacus and Napier's bones, and they work from there. Take it or leave it. You either do an approach like that, or you start with ENIAC or the Harvard Mark I or something from 1945. You pick your poison. If you want to be like really transgressive, you might start with an analog computer, or actually Faster Than Thought in one of those shelves, the first computer history book. That starts with Charles Babbage. But no matter what you choose, you have to make a choice. And if you're writing a history, the decisions you make dictate, well, they dictate how your history is written, but they also dictate how people are going to perceive that history. Because if you start with ENIAC, right, and then you mention later on, oh, there were some older machines, there's this British guy working on something, that presentation makes it sound like that work, oh, well, you could assume that led directly to ENIAC, or it was like a footnote. When it's actually a whole big computer and a whole separate line of thought and a whole different way to make a computer. It's some technology that existed way before. So I think the curation around how you discuss history is a big part of it's a big part of dictating what people believe and think about computer history.
Yes.
And
I think
there's not a right way to do it.
No. It's always tough. And I think talking about CHM makes me think about this, to merge together these two lanes of what a computer is or should be, or because a computer, like a modern computer, kind of going back to our modern perception of a computer, what even is a computer? When you try and
What's
look
a
at things in
language,
context,
Joe?
it's so much more, right? It's a totally different thing, kind of.
Well, it's used for totally
thanks
different
to Turing
applications.
completeness and the craziness of math modeling all things, which takes me back to, I won't discuss it, but there goes the philosophy of what is computability and how does it correspond to our reality.
It's something mathematically tractable. Don't worry about it.
I'm mildly philosophy pilled, so I won't go down there. But anyway, that when I think about this, and I talk about the ENIAC being the first electronic digital computer, and that being important because it's not clarified often and it is not presented that way, is that is its claim to fame as being electronic and going into that speed regime. But also that you've got kind of the parallel here, or maybe the thing that I'm talking about in terms of these different lanes through which to view computer history, or where you say where it came from, is this split between business machines and calculators or something like that. You know what I mean?
Like number versus string processors, that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to that, and especially like in early computing, you know, your character machines versus your numeric machines.
Yeah,
or whatever
UNIVAC versus RADAC. Actually, exactly.
And more broadly, the way that I always think of it is your IBM versus everyone else a little bit. Because what I think about is this is not what the IBM suit was about when it came to the ENIAC Anasoff Berry thing. But I mean, you don't have to feel for them that much. IBM is a gigantic mega corporation and they weren't even good at the time. I mean, you know, they were doing cool things, but like as they were a giant shitty mega corporation.
I mean, a monopoly is a monopoly.
Yes, you can't get away from that. But in that they really did, like, they just kind of accidentally were already in the computer business before anybody was doing computers, you know? And it wasn't even that they were ahead of the curve. It's that like they already had this use case and they had already started automating some stuff just by dint of that being their business. And then computers come along and they're like, yeah, we're already doing that.
We just have to add a jump.
That like, right. Like you add a couple extra features to these things and it's a computer, which takes me back to the SSEC that the IBM, they literally used one of their multiplier units, one of their card punch multiplier units, and made it into the ALU. That's what it's built around. And they automated one of their adding machines. And then it's kind of interesting because I'm not a big IBM person. I don't have a lot of IBM history, but this just always strikes me. And I think it's just because I didn't know a lot of that before I started digging into computer history. And then you just get this left field, like IBM just seems disconnected from everybody else.
Well, and IBM history is massive, deep, and wild because they have so much money that they can invest in anything that they think is a good idea at all. Right? And like once we hit the 80s when they're trying to figure out how to make a home computer, that's like the part I know best that's just really wacky because they throw like their the Palm, put everything in microcode process, or put all logic in microcode. It's just a microcode interpreter that they develop, and the first thing they use it for is the 5100, which is that like portable, luggable home computer that runs APL. They're like, oh, this will be great. We've developed this super advanced printed microcode machine. What are we going to use it for? Home computer. That'll sell really well.
Yeah, a lot of inventing things and then asking their marketing team to come up with a need. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
You see that a little bit in Deck too. We're getting a little too far into the future, I think.
Yeah, we should go back to the 1940s.
We really should, because you're going to be out of it real soon, is what I understand.
I'm escaping.
You're already done with it.
I'm done for a month or two, probably. I can't get
so
that
let's
far.
go back to, because it's in my notes and we've touched it and we've talked on it a little bit, but I would like you to go further down this because it's something that you talk about a bunch in the episodes, but I know I didn't realize until we started talking how passionate you are about it. And it's your, I have it described here as contemporary people just not being sure this is even the right direction or what a good direction is.
Yes.
And that goes to your,
Yeah,
is programming a good idea? Is
Are computers
digital
a good idea?
Yeah.
Do we want binary or decimal representation? So good catch. Discovering I'm passionate about a topic. Who could have known?
I mean, it's just, you talk about so many things and these things come up, but I didn't realize that it was a bugbear.
I wear my heart on my sleeve very often. So the idea of context, right? Very interesting, but specifically trying to figure out, I think a lot of history should be trying to figure out how things were viewed in the period. Because how we view something in history is interesting, but that's only part of the story. If we just told history through our lens, like you were saying, we need the lenses that undo our lenses. If we're just talking through our own lens all the time, that's not going to be accurate. That's not going to tell the full story.
History doesn't serve us.
Yeah, it doesn't serve us. So if you look at the context of very early developments around computers, there's still a lot of argument over what should be done, how it should be done, if it should be done, and why it should be done. And those arguments are things that are not well preserved, or the arguments that lost aren't well preserved. So like I was mentioning, if you read any early computer books, like I'm pointing to the shelf again, Gigantic Brains.
The right category.
That one. That book right there, Gigantic Brains. It's one of the first, or it is the first, like, bound book.
The beige spine or the black spine?
The beige spine.
Yep.
It's one of the first actual print books about computers. Its first chapter is just a justification for why computers are important.
Because it needs to be said.
Because it has to be said in the 1940s. It doesn't have to be said in the 1950s. That's fascinating to me. Or if you look at the first disclosure about ENIAC, it comes out as a press release from the U.S. Army in 1946. That spends so much time justifying why they spend so much money making this thing. And being
that's what I was going to jump in and say, there's a lot of, you got to make purchase decisions at this time.
Yes.
Right? There's people who are interested in this, just like there ever is with technology. And I mean, if you work with any kind of technology company, you've got plenty of passionate people who are like, I've heard of this thing, we should invest in it. And, people...
I've heard of blockchain. We're doing blockchain now.
Yes, we're doing blockchain now. But, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. It's not a thing that's just about IBM. It's just, that's how business goes. You're a big business. You want to be conservative generally because that's how you keep making your same income that you have. And when you're inside that, it is hard to make a change to this new thing because there's a lot of risk inherent in switching to a new thing.
Yeah,
so
there's
you need
inertia.
The arguments.
There's institutional inertia. And in this specific period in the late 40s, a lot of the institutional inertia is for things like human computer systems, right? Clerical workers with calculators, for grad students doing a bunch of work, or for analog computers for punch card tabulator equipment, right?
Can you even imagine? That just raises things in my head of like putting yourself in that context. Like I can see an immediate knee jerk of like, well, running this through a computer, how am I supposed to, like, I'm not looking at the numbers. How do I know they're right? Or like I can immediately,
or that's going to get rid of jobs. We talked earlier about how having fast computers means there's a different like job category now. Having a fast computer also means you are removing a specific job category. Because if you have a machine that does the work of someone with a calculator, you don't need someone with a calculator.
Have you ever seen or looked into, there's a whole interesting thing in terms of what is the economic metric for productiveness, I guess productiveness, like
Not
worker
GDP.
efficiency.
Yeah.
I mean, not like a specific one, but I'm looking for the term that is generally used, which is productivity, productivity.
Productivity.
That is 100% what I was looking for. It's just the metric of economic productivity is that I don't remember the details and I need to look back at it. And maybe this is something that should be covered sometime by somebody. I'm not even saying you. I'm just, somebody should look into this because I was not aware of it.
Joe, someone needs to run the numbers.
I know that was wonderfully vague of me, But there is this like apparently known dip in productivity when computers are introduced.
Ooh,
or not even, there's something like it's in the 80s or something.
Okay.
When, again, like take this with a massive grain of salt, because I can't remember the period.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like when office computers are more introduced to the workforce, and there's this expectation that it's going to raise productivity by a bunch, right? And productivity actually stagnates for a while.
Yeah, that makes
which is
sense.
fast, like for a while. And then it does go up. But like there's this whole thing, like there's a couple of these bumps in history. Like I feel like I was reading a thing, and this is you're well researched, and I come onto the show and say, Sean, I was reading a thing.
Joe,
I represent
read
the
text
boomer
on a
everyman.
screen.
Yeah.
So what was the text you saw?
I need to remember to bookmark things. And really the biggest caveat is I should go into there. This might have been something I read from some jackass on a forum at some point, and then being like, that's interesting. I should look into that. And
I was reading Tumblr and ...
Yes. This is how so much of our cultural knowledge comes to be.
All right, so what'd you read? What'd you read, Joe?
No, that was it. I don't remember the exact details on it, but just that there is not, there's this expected link between productivity and the introduction of computers in the workplace, and there actually isn't. There's a couple of weird lumps where it actually is. Potentially, there's like a decrease in productivity.
I bet some
over
journalist
a period before
wrote
it
a
picks
book
up.
about that in the 80s.
Probably, I feel like it is one of those things. But yeah, that's like if you can compare these two things, where it's computers in the workplace, which is pretty well attested via sales numbers and whatnot, versus economic productivity, and they are not correlated entirely.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Imagine adapting to the device that's suddenly in
and that's
your
the
office.
interesting thing, as I understand it, is that there are quite a few theories, but there's not, I mean, as much as any of those, trying to correlate to things, especially economic indicator with anything, is it's too late now. You can't ask people why that happened. The best you can do is
You
try
can't
and figure
go
out
and ask the
maybe
Federal
why that was.
Reserve where the money went.
And why.
Yeah.
What people were thinking and why.
Why
they
are
did.
profits down, Fed?
Anyway, just everything there about the adoption of computers and the assumption now that they're going to be a hot commodity back in the day because they are now. And we see how useful they are.
And going back to the period, there are alternatives to electronic digital computers. Electronic analog computers, I always forget this. Electronic analog shows up in 1945. It's the same age as electronic digital, which I always jog my memory when I look that up, because in my head it should be way earlier. Like, you have the technology. Why wouldn't you do that in the 30s? But I guess it probably has to do with tolerances of manufacturing or something.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know a ton about it, but I know vaguely good op amps are a problem, or rather stable amplifiers that have really good tolerances for those kinds of ranges.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are something that an op amp is really good at, and that's the whole thing about an op amp. Because the reason I have any vague awareness about this is just me wanting to know why op amps exist in the first place. Why is a transistor amplifier not good enough for amplification purposes? Why did we have this thing that we invented called the op amp? And of course, they're heavily used in analog computers. That's the element of an analog computer.
It's the core.
And yeah, I don't know a ton, but I think that's roughly the thing, is because of the way the feedback amplifier works, it makes it very stable.
But so Joe, it's 1946. You're an investor. I come to you saying that electronic analog computers are the next big thing. They were just invented. They do math. Give me $5,000. Does that sound any more crazy than me saying digital computers were just invented? They're going to be the next big thing. Give me $5,000.
I mean, considering, because the other thing that this all makes me think of right now is mechanical computers.
Yeah.
Being a thing that's also around for a while. And as you skipped past in your episode, because not worth mentioning, but you mentioned mechanical differentiators or what, integrators.
Oh yeah, mechanical integrators.
Calculus machine, motorized calculus machines. Kind of a weird dead end, but like they're still heavily using mechanical computing stuff in World War II and just post World War II military equipment, like to a huge extent. Like a lot of aviation stuff is
a lot of the bombing sites
mechanical computing.
Were completely mechanical. You can't put
like when those are still mechanical computing. Asking, hey, do you want an analog computer? Is like just I see the craziness there in comparison with that as well. Is no, we're good. we're just figuring out this stuff.
Yeah, we'd like the new stuff, please. But the new stuff's still ambiguous in that period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Let's see. To back up a little bit, I actually do have another one that is, like all of these, just a spur off of our central kind of thesis or the thing that we're exploring around here today, which is to go back. This starts exactly where we're talking at right now, the tangent that we just came off of, where, to refresh ourselves, the tangent really was the arguments against computation at the time.
Yes.
And the one that gets me is because you've raised it a couple times, and it's super interesting because you're the only person I've ever heard reference it, is a programmed computer, do we want automatic calculators to be programmed?
Yeah, why would we need that? Why would you need a device that does two things? All we do is cryptography. We just need the cryptography box.
And before I dive in further, I need a refresher from you in that it's the argument is for fixed purpose or fixed function hardware, right?
It's for either fixed function or configurable, because there's some proposals in like the early 50s, late 40s, where it's like, oh yeah, well you can accomplish the same thing as a programmed computer using a plug board that has a series of subroutines that is approaching the sophistication of like Turing complete stored program, but it's not quite there because it's cheaper and easier to do that, and you don't actually need a universal computer.
And it's more made for purpose. Like it's fit for purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
And like maybe you're going to have to take this programmable thing and wrangle it to do what you want, or figure out, as opposed to just having a thing that roughly does that and you can adjust it to do the job you need.
Yeah. Well, you don't need a programmer. You don't need, like, that was the other part of the cost argument, is you don't need to hire special programming humans, whatever those are.
Right. Which would just negate your cost of savings and eliminating jobs by buying that computer in the first place.
You just have new jobs. It's just a circle.
It tends to be the way it works out somehow. But a shower thought that I had while I was working today and doing some jogging around my office, listening to the episode, and it struck me on that particular topic. The implicit assumption there when we're talking about it and kind of rolling our eyes at it almost in the present is that eye roll assumes that that programmable hardware won, right?
Ooh.
And consider this.
Okay, I like this.
Did it? Because, I mean, how much fixed function hardware do you have in a computer these days? The CPU is critical, right? That flexibility is critical. It's great. It's very important. But video decoding, encryption, compression, there are fixed function units in like everybody's modern computer that's all they do.
Well, you were talking about cars. That's a special purpose computer. It's full of them.
Sure, but even beyond being a special purpose computer, like a ECU in a car is still, it has a CPU in it that's running code and it's specific code. But from a hardware perspective, like a MPEG decoder in your machine is not programmable. It is you feed it the address of MPEG blocks to be decompressed and turned into rendered frames and a buffer to put them into. And it doesn't have like a program inside of it that's running. It is a state machine that does MPEG decoding.
So I'm agreeing.
And without
with
that,
you.
we don't have modern streaming and all of that.
No, I'm agreeing with you 100%. The arguments against programmability are correct, first of all. Would you consider an embedded device a special purpose computer?
See, there's
is that a program? Is something with a ROM a programmable computer?
Ooh,
like behaviorally, right?
Yeah.
Because you treat it like
You've
it does one
burned
thing.
it in, especially like,
Yeah.
let's say you've got an embedded system with a mask ROM, right?
Yes.
It's cut, it's done. Those are, I would make the argument, like, here's, nobody is arguing against me, but here's the argument that I'm making to the voices in my head
Good.
that you have put there now
Good.
is, yeah, it's a multi-chip system, sure, but like there were plenty of like multi-chip CPUs, especially like late 70, like VLSI is just coming in. And if you have a multi-chip system, that doesn't make it not, you know,
It's still a computer.
it's still a computer or whatever that system is supposed to be. So I kind of like that argument from that perspective, in that, like, sure, it's two different chips, but it's not changeable. You have burned it in. It is fixed. You will never change it. And it is dedicated to that purpose. I will still say, sure, but you could like yank out that ROM chip and you could do whatever you want with that CPU. It's still a general purpose CPU. It's not a state machine. It's not because I mean,
There's levels. There's levels,
again, like
for sure.
talking embedded prior to computerized systems, you're talking relay ladder logic stuff. And that's very similar to, I mean, that basically is state machines to a certain extent. And it's doing everything directly in hardware without even doing any kind of execution.
I mean, an
loop or
abacus
having
is a
kind of
state
generality.
machine, so yes.
I guess.
If you go to the CHM, their exhibit opens with an abacus. It's a state machine. It's in the museum.
This reminds, I mean, anything is Turing complete if you put a human in the loop. It's like the Turing complete, it was either the Turing complete PowerPoint or the Turing complete Excel, where it's like, yeah, it's Turing complete, but you need a person to click on the button to advance state. So, I don't know.
I love Turing complete Magic the Gathering. It's like, okay, cool. Just play Magic the Gathering with the homies, and you're a computer the whole time.
This is, so that tingles something in the back of my head that I feel like I've heard of this, but I was
There's
not
a paper
like, aware
about
of
it.
in my consciousness.
It's one of those X's Turing complete papers. There's billions at this point.
Oh man, it's all a simulation of a simulation.
It is, but it's important to note that we agree that embedded systems aren't actually computers. If you're an embedded programmer, no, you're not. You work with special purpose hardware. It's not a computer. Hot take. That's my hot take for the day.
That's a very hot take. I'm loath to touch it any further.
I'm going to say that to someone next time I'm at an event and someone says they work in embedded systems. I'd be like, oh, so you're not a programmer, and just see if I get hit, I think.
Oh man. Let me just rescan to see if there's anything we didn't hit. Like I said, there's a bunch of stuff we could dive back into, and we kind of had.
You don't want to talk about the adding circuit found in a desk drawer? How did it get there? Why was he looking in a
do
desk
hit me with that,
drawer?
'cause I've done a lot of talking around the idea of the episode, but we haven't done some good hitting on the character pieces in this episode, because there are a couple good ones.
It did kind of end up just being an excuse for me to cover computers that don't have enough resources to be a full episode or even like a bonus episode. Because
A little potpourri.
yeah, because like ICCE, right, the Imperial College Computing Engine, I think.
It doesn't matter. I've never heard of it before.
No one has. That was the one where the source I had was a cover letter that someone wrote in Microsoft Word and published online that went with a republishing of the original paper on the computer. And that's the only historical information I have about it.
This is, I don't know if you get further into it in the episode. I should know. Was it completed, or did they only ever get to the point of the ALU?
Well, it was completed. It was completed in 1953. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the thing. They finished the ALU in 49.
They pulled it back out and said, all right, computers are going now. Let's
we should
get back
finish
to this.
It was a grad student got obsessed with it because he's like, oh, people are making computers, and this is like step one of a computer. I can push this all the way. But when they were first making the ALU, the guys couldn't find a circuit for doing a relay adder, and they somehow found one in a desk drawer. And that's all he says in like his history treatment about recollections of the machine is just like, oh yeah, we found it in a desk drawer. Good stroke of luck.
That's like some backrooms shit, man.
I'm really curious if he
did
actually
God place the adding machine in the drawer.
Well, it's either that or it. This is fuzzy recollections in a random Word document I found on someone's website.
Grain of salt.
Big
spoonful of salt
like that big. Yeah, maybe he did find it in a desk drawer. I'm kind of curious why that would be in a desk drawer in a college in London.
That also seems like kind of a lot to have in a desk drawer.
Well, I mean, a relay adding circuit, if it's 1 bit, isn't very big, right?
Not huge. It's still like I don't store breadboarded. What I'm picturing in my head is the Bell Model 1 adding circuit.
Oh, yeah.
That breadboard, which
Model
isn't
K.
huge. But like if we're picturing something around that.
Oh, no, this was a schematic. It was a schematic, so it wasn't the full circuit.
Oh, well, that makes it a lot less exciting, Sean.
I
don't want to let you down. It still is like...
It's still pretty weird.
In a certain way, now it makes it more mysterious in that like it's haunted hidden information that comes out of the drawer.
But why is that
But
hidden?
I have to
That's
shift
so
gears
mundane.
from going, I thought somebody had a machine in a desk.
No, I would be so much deeper into the weeds if it was they were looking for an adding circuit and they opened a desk drawer and there was an adding circuit there. Like that gets to some deep philosophical questions.
Now that we're talking about it, this does feel like an odd assumption on my part.
Yes. They just opened the drawer and it's right there. Wow. Big drawer.
That's why we were excited. But no, having it be a written down schematic does feel much more haunted now.
Yeah. Well, because it's not the thing, it's an artifact of the thing. That means someone made an adding circuit, got rid of it, but kept the schematic in a desk drawer. Why? Was it made at the desk? Who's to say?
And that we have no idea
No, not at all.
who was doing it.
Because
Who
again,
wrote it down?
it's a single paragraph in a random Word document I found on the internet.
Which, is that not its own kind of haunted document? Like, this is haunted documentception.
I mean...
You have a haunted document. This is like a House of Leaves. You're reading a book about a haunted document that someone found a haunted document in, and they're trying to describe you their haunted document as you read this haunted document.
Well, Joe, isn't that the study of history?
It really is. It's not a simulation all the way down. It's all made up haunted papers and the ghosts of haunted papers in our collective subconscious. That is history.
I don't think there's any more for me to say about computer history ever again now. It's just haunted documents.
Just haunted documents. Well, on that note, I think we've hit just about an hour, and I don't think we can get better than the haunted documents. It's like dead internet theory of history.
Yes.
There is no history. There is only made up things that we're reading. And we infer that the past exists. I feel like that's a story somewhere.
No, there is the like fake history stuff where people are like, oh, there's 500 years of history that's just made up by like the Carthaginians or something. Or no, it's Charlemagne. Charlemagne's supposed to be made up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty big thing in old history that we're just not sure. I know the Charlemagne one that you're talking about, but that there's a whole bunch where we're like, well, have you ever heard of? Wow, this is definitely the end of the episode because we are just going into talking about random history.
We should end the episode.
We should end the episode, but there was kind of I don't want to say a conspiracy theory because that makes it sound very modern, but just that there was a thought that there was like 300 years of history missing that that was added to history by, I think that like the Catholic Church or something.
Yes.
That like the I don't know, the 800s or something don't exist. Is that the same thing as the Charlemagne
That's the
thing?
same thing, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was just listening to a Charlemagne. We should, on a personal note, sometime we should just talk about history that is not about computers on our own.
I agree.
Yes. But that is not the venue that this is.
This is a computer history podcast.
Yep. And we appreciate you guys tolerating us through that chat towards the end there. But I'm sure we will have many more interesting things to think about on the early years of computing going forward. But I am interested to move on into other topics because as fun as talking about the 40s and our first gen and second gen machines has been. I mean, it's really what we've stuck on, I think, since that's the area you've been in since we've started doing Adjunct.
Yeah,
and it's a fun area, but I think this is going to be really cool to move on to other stuff. And
I agree.
And come back to that at some point, because we just keep circling these concepts and it's just going to make me build an EDVAC.
You got it.
All right.
You just got to build EDVAC. Anyway, Joe's going away to build EDVAC now.
Yep. And Sean needs a rest because he's been in his office all day.
Ah, yeah.
So, thank you for coming along with us as always today. We will see you again the week after next. We will try and actually keep up decent timing now. I think I apologized last time if I didn't. Sorry about the funky timing on the last episode. We just were all over the place, but that's fine. We're a little amateur podcast anyway. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you on next episode of Adjunctive Code.
Catch you around.